I think on that note, it is time that we change tack just a little bit and head over to the snug corner there. Yeah. Is there a snug corner in the Tower of Rassilon? I think we're about to find out, because it's very difficult to be objective about all of this, and there's so much to talk about, a lot of which is shrouded in mystery, and things do get lost along the way. But not all of the sacred scrolls and writings are lost. It's all there if you know where to look. And there's one particular glowing volume that's positively loaded with all these secrets, facts, and stats about our favourite TV series, and it can always be found under the arm or on the bedside table of our Simon there. And of course, I'm talking about the Doctor Who Diary.
Diary of Russ.
Yes. Welcome, folks, because we've got a diary with a bit of a difference this week, as we are focusing on the Five Doctors. So we're not going to talk about any of the episodes that would have been on in past years. We are just staying with the Five Doctors as a very special and different approach to the diary for this week. So we're only talking about a few things here, because although we've said that the Five Doctors did enjoy some publicity, and it did, back in those days, again, publicity was not the same as it is now, and so you just didn't get as much in those days as you would these days. But one of the things that was key, actually, to the Five Doctors, and we're looking really at this week and next week, because we are now at that anniversary where the Five Doctors would have been broadcast. Actually next Friday on the 25th, and interestingly this year the diary actually falls so that the day falls exactly right. So the 25th of November this year is on the Friday, exactly when you would have been settling down to watch the Five Doctors, which is rather perfect. The only difference is I think Children in Need is on tomorrow night. Sadly,
yes,
you can't recreate the whole proceedings, sadly, by just blasting the Five Doctors in the middle of. You can't
have it all our own way, can we?
Not at all. But we're looking at this week and next week in 1983. Now then, one of the great things for me in 1983 was on the 21st of November. Was one of the very first things that happened publicity-wise, and that was Blue Peter did a special segment.
I watched this.
On Doctor Who, and this was great. It was mentioned in the Radio Times the week before, so we knew this was coming up. And this was an 8-minute section, and it is on the it's on the DVD of the Five Doctors for anybody that's got the DVD out there. And this was brilliant because it was a fantastic opportunity to see some clips from shows that certainly it was the first time I had ever seen some of these clips. So they showed clips from the Daleks, as in the original story from 63. The 10th Planet, we saw the Cybermen from the 10th Planet for the first time. The Web of Fear, we mentioned an abominable snowman earlier, a Yeti. You get to see the clip from the Web of Fear. Claws of Axos, the Sea Devils, the Android Invasion. All these clips just get thrown at you. And again, to put this in context, back in 1983, this just didn't really happen. You just generally didn't see sort of clips like that. You couldn't see them anywhere. But one of the highlights for me personally was they showed a clip of the Raston Warrior robot sequence. They trailed it. And bearing in mind, this was 5 days before you actually saw the episode. So the Raston Warrior robot hadn't been seen by anybody. No photos had been seen. And they showed this sort of about a minute-long clip of the Raston sequence at the beginning when the Third Doctor and Sarah Jane first appear in the quarry, and I just remember as a 15-year-old just rewinding that clip. I must have worn the tape out, the VHS tape, just rewinding that clip over and over again, because the Raston Warrior robot sequence I think is one of the best in the Five Doctors, and so to get that little clip of it, that little teaser a few days ahead of it was just brilliant, and the whole sequence is finished off beautifully when Peter Davison and Richard Herndl appear in costume, in character, driving in this brilliant variety coach bus that proceeds from from the Longleat celebration in April of 1983. They'd raised funds at the Longleat celebration in '83, and they bought this bus for the Variety Club and presented it to a kids' home, bless them. And so you have this brilliant sequence when Peter Davison and Richard Hunter are in character, talking about this bus that they bought and how they're arguing over who actually saves the day.
It's delightful. And of course, it's only the second time that Richard Hurndall played the character. It's the final time, because he died just a few months after the transmission of the Five Doctors. And here he is. It's like he's been playing it for years, isn't it?
Well, and also, let's not forget, this was the first time we had all seen Richard Hurndall playing the first Doctor, because again, this was, say, 4 or 5 days ahead of the actual transmission of the episode. So this was the very first time we got to see him in character playing the part.
This item, Simon, this feature completely changed my fandom, because I only caught half of this. I was called to the other room for my tea, and I didn't see the Reston Warrior robot clip, JT. I was called halfway through, and I didn't have a blank videotape to hand, and I was devastated. So from that moment on, from the January of '84, I always made sure I had a blank videotape at the exact at a space set aside for Doctor Who features, and I would pop it in with great speed, flip it into the top loader and hit record. And it didn't matter whether it was tea time or not. I never missed a Doctor Who feature from that point for the rest of the classic run. In fact, up until about 5 years ago, strangely, there's very little that I missed, and it was all because of missing this. I saw it in '83, then I didn't see it again until the special edition DVD. So
my blank video, my video was always in the video ready, in case anything came on in those days, to just dive at it, do the. I mean, Java Beans just also mentioned something that I noticed when I saw this live back then on Blue Peter. Peter Davison's in his 21st. Yep, there it is. His season 21. What's new? Because at that point we hadn't seen that, of course. So when he came out of the Variety Club bus with wearing that, I was like, look what he's wearing. You know, I was absolutely delighted. It was a sneak preview.
The mullet's gone.
Yeah, exactly. Did someone famous play the robot?
No.
Was it Wayne Sleep? Was it Wayne Sleep?
He was a dancer. He wasn't a dancer.
Yeah. Okay. Hence the moves. Very elegant.
But interestingly, the Blue Peter sequence is mentioned in this little beastie that we're going to talk about next, because this was released literally this very week, 39 years ago. This edition of the Radio Times came out. And if I flick through to page 40, there we go. Blue Peter, happy birthday, Doctor Who. It's in there. You've got that's the actual. There we go. I'm going to hold that up to there. You go. There's the Blue Peter section that says happy birthday, Doctor Who, with Simon Groom, Peter Duncan, and of course Janet Ellis, who was in Horns of Nymon. And so it does this beautiful little trailer in the Radio Times. There's some great stuff in this. Willow the Wisp I've just spotted. Jack and Orange Hill.
I remember picking this up, Simon, and it was in between the publication of this and the Five Doctors being on. It was sort of like the longest 10 days of my life as a kid. It was all there.
I seem to remember the Radio Times, I think, used to come out on a Tuesday, the Tuesday before.
That's right.
Yes.
So it would have been out now.
Check out page 9.
Check out page 9. Hold on, flicking.
There's a little picture on page 9, which I think is one of those lovely things about the BBC, because it's a sort of, in a sense, there he is.
I'm going past the W.H. Smith's advert for ZX Spectrum.
But on page 9's Facebook is when you've got if you've still got your copy. Have a look. Look who's there in the base. Look at that.
Sylvester McCoy.
Oh wow! See, I have this as well. I've still got my copy of this of the Radio Times.
I've got mine as well, but it's a little bit more yellowy. Look,
I haven't looked through it. Yeah, mine's about more like yours actually, JT. But I haven't looked through it to that degree in a long time. I've certainly never noticed the McCoy picture in there. Absolutely fantastic stuff. There's a great big feature, of course, which I just poured over as a child.
In the back, though, I mean, Sarah, Charlotte, you will not understand how important this edition of Radio Times was. This was 28 pence. And the coverage of Doctor Who on those 3 pages were at the back of the magazine, and it was the first cover we'd had in decades.
Well, I think it was the first cover we'd had, certainly, probably since the Three Doctors 10 years before.
Yep. It was so important to us all.
So
and yet
the
it was in the back.
There was never a Radio Times cover for Tom Baker, which is just incredible to think of.
Yes, it is.
And so when this appeared through your letterbox, and I can still remember, I can't remember whether we knew that there was going to be a Radio Times cover or not. I think we all suspected that there would be. There we go. Yeah, so I just remember being so excited, and it's still a fantastic piece of artwork on the part of Andrew Skilleter. Did the artwork for this.
He did, yeah.
And he went back
classic. Up, pardon the phrase, years later, because he came out with these prints years later, and he actually changed the first image of the Richard Hurndall.
He adjusted Hurndall's painting, didn't he?
What I've always loved about this piece of artwork, and you have to look really, really closely at it, but in the black, you probably won't make it out, but in the black of the obelisk, you can see the John
title sequence, isn't it?
You can't see it on that, really.
Just as a ghost in there. And I always love that. It's just so subtle, that was. It's a beautiful piece of artwork.
So important.
And so you're right, this edition of the Radio Times was just really, really important to Doctor Who fans, because it legitimised the show again after such a long time. It put it front and centre, and it was just an incredibly exciting week to be alive as a Doctor Who fan. It's as simple as that.
Well, again, as a child, I had most people, I think, Ian, had the radio and the TV Times every week because it was the only way you knew what was on the telly. You know, you had to have both. And I'd loved Doctor Who, and in my living memory, my favourite show had never been on the cover of the Radio Times. Every other show had. Finally, it was Doctor Who's turn. So, I got it.
One night only.
Kept it. Yeah, one night only.
What a night, though. What a night.
Again, we should explain back in those days to the younger Spacebookers watching, you had to have both the Radio Times and the TV Times, because the Radio Times was exclusive to the BBC television programmes and radio, and the TV Times was exclusive to the ITV network. So you had to buy 2 a week if you wanted the full.
That was before my time. I always had the combined one. So
it changed a couple of decades later to the format we know now with all the channels in it. But in those days, you had to have both.
I can honestly
truly say
Skybox.
I can honestly truly say that the 5 Doctors was better than the 50th.
Oh, yeah.
We'll come back to that. Let's come back to that in another show.
Yeah, we've had that argument.
What else have you got for us?
Moving on, but staying with the Radio Times, this, of course, was absolutely crucially essential for any Doctor Who fan. It was just the most.
Look how much it cost, £1.50.
£1.50. That was a lot then as well.
And this was just one of the most exciting things that had ever happened to me as a Doctor Who fan. To have an entire magazine dedicated. I know we got the monthly at that point, but this is just absolutely lush. You know, if I just open it up and just seeing the title sequences all put out like that. For the first time I'd seen that, it was great. Because as a fan, you can just relive the title sequences just by looking at them. Because this is stuff that you just
great condition as well.
Stuff that I'd never seen. Yeah, I bought this from my local newsagent. My eyes. I think it was about 3 weeks worth of my pocket money, and I ran back home and asked my mother for an extra 50p so I could afford it. I remember I just couldn't believe my eyes. And I've bought several copies of it since on eBay over the years.
Yeah,
I've got several of these.
I think we all have. But I mean, this came out, as I recall, I don't have an exact date on this. I think it was early November, so I think it was possibly last week, 39 years ago, that this came out. And again, we certainly knew that this was coming out from the magazine, so I definitely remember racing down to W.H. Smith's as soon as this came out and picking up a copy and just poring over it because it was just the most exciting thing. It even had a preview of the forthcoming season 21 in. It's got photos of some of the monsters from season 21 that we hadn't even seen at that point. So again, this is
nice
just
preview.
very exciting. A really weird piece of fiction in there called Birth of a Renegade by none other than Eric
Why-
Seymour.
Why is Colin Baker on the cover?
I was about to say that.
Because he'd
Because
already
it
been
was
cast
like
as the Doctor at that point.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah,
And
he-
you get
There's
to
an
actually
article.
get-
There's an article on him in there, like a
Yeah,
preview.
here we go.
On the back
There's
page,
the
there's an article there.
There's the article on the back page about Colin, because we knew by that point that Peter was going, and that Colin was going to be the next Doctor. And so I always loved the fact that he's just peeking
Yeah,
in.
it's nice.
Yeah,
nice. It's kind of like when we got Peter Capaldi's eyebrows in 2013. Look at it, look at it like that, Sarah. Look at it like that.
The brilliant thing
Yeah,
about that,
this must have sold like bucket loads, JT. I imagine you had a similar story. You saw it in a shop and just landed on it.
well, I knew it was coming because I read about it in the monthly, so I knew it was coming, and it actually was the week before the Radio Times cover came out, and I had it on order from my local newsagents back there. Well, in hindsight, I mean, this was based very much on the previous one 10 years before, the Radio Times 10th anniversary, and none of us had that because we were all too young to have it really.
I did.
When you look at the 10th anniversary one, what's clever about the 10th anniversary one and the 20th is that the format is the same.
Exactly.
And what's happened is that in the 20th anniversary edition one, everything is color coded just as much as the 10th one.
Nice.
So each decade, each Doctor is color coded. It's absolutely fantastic. And when I finally got this, I've seen this. Oh my God! Lovely symmetry from the designers back then. Actually thinking about it, they went back to the 10th one, looked at the 10th one, and thought, "How did they do it then?" And then they recreated it with the 20th, and it was beautiful. Absolutely fantastic stuff.
It's a fantastic publication. Yeah, sorry, I was just showing. There's here. This one's for Ian. There you go, Ian. There's Richard.
Hey,
Gregory,
brilliant.
helmet.
Brilliant.
In his 80s shorts. Let's just say.
Just great to see behind the scenes. There's also before we move on from this, just to finish on this, really, there's a really nice there's a poem. Get this, a poem on the back page by Roger Waddis, who used to be the resident poet at the Radio Times. Yes, they did have a resident poet in the 1980s at the Radio Times, and it's this
I'd forgotten about that as well.
It's this fantastic poem, and I love this bit because this is still true today. Right at the very, very bottom, it says, and I can't read it. There we go. Doctor Who, born 23rd of November 1963, and still going strong.
Do they not have a poet anymore?
No.
So they
No,
not have
they
a poet
have-
anymore? That's terrible of the BBC. It shows another thing how the BBC's gone down. I mean, we've got a poet laureate in the country. Why is the BBC got one? Come on.
They have a gardener. They still have a gardener.
So moving on also in this week, actually next week, or this week or last week, depending on whereabouts in the country you were. And I'm delighted
What time zone you're in?
I'm delighted to see that JT has a copy directly behind you because mine is locked away somewhere, and that's the novelisation, the Target novelisation, which I can see just behind you there, JT.
Yeah.
Now this is a controversial. Is that your first edition? Is that a first edition?
It's a first edition. Yes. Carry on.
And if you move it, you will see that it's silvered. This was so exciting at the time because it's got this silver foil cover. But this was really controversial because it actually came out before the 5 Doctors had been broadcast. And so it caused a lot of problem at the time. John Nathan Turner had tried really hard to coincide it with it being released on the actual day of the transmission. But of course, the day of the transmission got moved from the Wednesday to the Friday. So it all went pear-shaped. And so it got released on the Thursday, the day before.
Oh, hang on.
Look at this. I was one of the naughty ones. 20th of November was the day I bought that, the 20th of November 1983, and then it went on the shelf with the others, and I didn't read it till the night.
So you got it early because depending on where you were in the country, some places had it 2 weeks in advance of the episode.
2 weeks.
2 weeks.
I mean, I saw it. I saw it as well. So I've got mine here too. And I saw it the day after the 5 Doctors was broadcast. This is also a first edition.
First edition as well, yeah.
It's also a first edition.
Yeah, first edition.
And this, and just like you, mate. Also, if you go inside there, I've written the date there.
Yes.
But mine says the 26th of November, 1983. There we are.
Down to Smith's on the Saturday, and you bought it. Brilliant.
This was actually This was actually in a local newsagent. They used to sell paperbacks of all manner of things, mainly Mills and Boon. This was just in a local newsagent about
one of the racks?
my home. Yeah, I couldn't believe my eyes. So if I'd have seen it 2 weeks before, I think I'd have probably passed out.
Well, yeah. I mean, it was tempting. Simon. I'd actually seen this about 2 days before in my local bookshop, and they had more face out, and they had about 10 copies in. I swear to God. And I'd looked at it and thought, I can't because I haven't seen it yet. I'm not allowed to have it. But I went back a couple of days later, obviously, and bought it and then put it on the shelf, as I say.
I don't know. How did you manage to not read it? Didn't you read any of it, JT?
No, I didn't. I did read.
I wouldn't have done either.
I read the fantastic poster offer, and I got that far, and then I turned over to chapter 1 is called The Game Begins. I thought, no, you're not allowed. You can't watch it. I tell you what annoys me about this to this day is the cover is beautiful, as we're talking about.
Yeah,
it's
so
gorgeous. Scratchy, isn't it? Isn't it scratchy though, Dan? You guys are all
mine has for years. Mine was in a sort of plastic dust jacket. It isn't anymore because it's with the rest of my targets, and so it is in pretty good nick. But obviously, I read this one a lot. The spine isn't cracked, but like you say, it has scratched against my best efforts. It was in a plastic dust jacket for years and years. And years.
£1.50.
Yeah,
£1.50.
It went up. It went up, but I think it was by 30 pence. It went up from £1.20 to £1.50. The regular price of a Target book at that point was £1.20, and it went up by a whole 30 pence to pay for the
because it was a special.
It was a special edition. But I loved the artwork on it. Again, it was a lovely cover by Andrew Skilleter, and in many ways I prefer it to the Radio Times. It's a fantastic piece of artwork, and it was just so exciting to have the book.
This is a piece of real graphic design as well. It's beautifully thought out. You know, it's
so exciting
really
seeing being a kid and just seeing K9, the Cybermen, the Daleks, all in one story. You're like,
what's not?
Well, you were.
You were.
I mean, that cover though, Sarah. That cover. I mean, I was exactly like that. I was like, oh my God, because you saw all those elements, and you just thought, this is the moment we're going to see K9 whipping the Daleks' ass. It never happened, did it? You know. But I was like, that's one of the things I wanted to see inside the book. I wanted that to happen, and it didn't. Thanks, parents.
And very, very finally, the only thing really to mention in the diary this week is the fact that the Americans got it first. If you are out there, you Americans, you got it on the
And they're still boasting about it in the bloody live chat, James A. Fitzpatrick.
Right, James. I tell you something, Sarah and Charlotte. That was controversial in fandom because none of us were happy with that. And that's where I really started to feel what. You know,
it did cause a lot of animosity at the time. People felt British fans felt really, really badly shortchanged. We were really missed up.
Well, I was going to say it's all right. When it came to Moffat's turn for me and Sarah, we got the same experience.
Okay. I've just thought as well. There is one very, very final thing to mention actually in the diary this week, and this is something that very few people know about. That there was, although we missed the 5 Doctors on transmission on the 23rd of November, so we didn't celebrate Doctor Who on Doctor Who days we should have done, there was a BBC programme, Doctor Who, on the 23rd of November, 1983. Very few people will have seen it. It went out, believe it or not, on BBC 2 at, I think I can tell you, 11:40 at the close down. Let me check. What did it end? What did it go out afterwards? I can tell you by looking through my Radio Times. Let's have a look. Okay, yeah, here we go. So Newsnight.
11:40, yeah. Newsnight
finished at 11:40 on BBC 2 on the 23rd of November, 1983. And sure enough, straight after it, at close down, there was about a 5-minute little programme dedicated to Doctor Who. They used some of the music from the recently released music LP. And they put up a montage of photos, and we had various photos of all the Doctors. It's just a nice little 5-minute montage sequence of stills just brought up with music from the 5 Doctors. That went out at Close Down on BBC Two. I've only ever seen it once because a fan taped it and showed it to me. Hello, Nick, if you are out there. He taped it and showed it to me, and I couldn't believe it. That was.
I have never heard of this.
It's actually not on the DVDs, is it? It's never been shown.
I've never seen it since, and I genuinely wouldn't believe it happened if I hadn't seen it for myself. I wouldn't believe it.
And if it's the montage, that means if they've got the music, if we could track down the pictures, that could be really easily recreated.
Oh, absolutely. If somebody, well, I know people have got it out there on VHS. Richard Molesworth, if you're watching, you have to track this down. Mick, who you know has a copy of it on VHS. You've got to put it on the Blu-ray when it comes out.
They used to play it in the odd convention that I went to, because I remember saying, "Where's this from?" And when an older fan said, "Oh, this was blah, 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 blah." But I've only just realised it's not on any of the DVDs. Maybe on the forthcoming Series 22 Blu-ray box set it might be on. Yeah,
got a lovely comment here from James as well. We'll keep talking to you, James. You're okay. You can stay. He says, I watched the Five Doctors in my best friend's basement on one channel, turned over to another channel, and immediately watched it again. I watched Power of the Doctor with the same friend this year.
Oh, that's quite sweet.
It's a nice story, James. Thank you. I mean, sorry you had to sit through the Power of the Doctor, but yes. Fabulous, really lovely story. Thank you for bringing it to us. And yes, Jack Thursby saying no, it's not on YouTube. It would have been.
Someone find out. Tell us right now live.
We need to know these things. We need to know these things. Absolutely fascinating stuff. And yet, as always, this story keeps bringing me things that I didn't know, even though I always think I know everything there is to know about this, and I'm proven to be wrong really, really quick. Thanks for putting all that together for us, Simon. A real hurtle down memory lane with all those covers, all those
this week because I just love the Five Doctors so much. Great.
Awesome.